word about this session. This session was to have been a dialogue or trialogue, really, between Dennis Ross, Anwar al-Sadat, and Helmi al-Ghazar. Mr. Ghazar was flown in by the Washington Institute, checked into this hotel, was here, and then checked out, and is not here to participate in this event. We regret that very much. The Institute went to great lengths to secure his participation in this event, believing it is very important to have had the full range of discussion that this event would have had with Mr. Ghazar's participation.
Well, I mean, I would, of course, have loved to have my colleagues who disappear. But anyway, I will try to express to you exactly what we have in Egypt. I have had a lot of questions from some of the friends who are sitting here, whom they are worried about Egypt, confused about what's going on there. And I can tell you, we also, Egyptians, are confused and also worried. As you know, we have this legacy of ignorance and dictatorship, and whereby most of Egyptians, oppositions, citizens, even those who are in power, they really don't know what to do. It took us all by surprise when the revolution took place. It seems that there was no one ready how to deal with the post-revolution. So now the situation is we have the Muslim Brotherhood, Freedom and Justice Party, who have been managing to get the majority in the parliament. And we have elected a president with an Islamic background. And this was, to be honest, free and fair election. So the man is legitimate. We cannot argue with this. And we all say, well, okay, this is people as well. We have to give him a chance and see how things will go. The problem is now, after 10 months, we all find out that they lack a lot of experience, qualifications. And they are more for consolidating power than having consensus or containing other players, political parties, youths. They are really obsessed by this sort of conspiracy theory. And that's why the lack of trust is very much in Egypt nowadays. We thought that they will be smart and use this opportunity to try to give a positive message that a ruling party with an Islamic background could perform and could really be fair with all, whether minorities, Christians, women, which actually is not happening nowadays. We have seen the way they have been behaving. It's not promising at all. So the problem we have now is Egypt need that there has to be a sort of consensus because of the challenges we have. We still, as I said, believe that they are fully legitimized, but they cannot do it alone. And this is what we keep telling them. So we have been asking them that they should somehow find a way to include other players, other political parties. Actually, so far, I haven't seen any serious attempt to do this. Whether they are unwilling, whether they, as I said, don't believe on this. So lately, the last couple of days, we thought reshuffling the government might be a chance to try to include other political parties. It didn't happen. And it didn't happen because most of the political parties believe that it's not enough to call me and say, well, can you nominate one or two? This is not the way it should be. There has to be a national dialogue with a clear agenda whereby whatever we agree has to be respected and we all have to be committed to. But just calling, asking to nominate one or two to be in the cabinet ministers, this is not the way it is. It's risky, and everyone say, no, we will not be part of this. So, also, they are still stubborn with the general prosecutor, whom we believe that he is not legitimate. According to the constitution, the way they have been dealing with the judiciary system in general was very obvious that they are actually knocking down all institutions. Al-Azhar, who is known to be promoting the moderate Islam, the church, the media. We have seen a lot of the judiciary and the Ministry of Interior, the police, actually. So it doesn't look good. But again, I believe that the only hope we have, or the only chance we have, is the coming parliamentary election. Because this is something which we believe if we could manage those opposition or seculars, liberals, if they could manage to have a good representation, we could have some balance. Because of the new constitution now, the prime minister, according to the new constitution, is actually nominated by the party who got the majority. And the prime minister have powers same as the president. So this is our only hope, that we have to work hard, we have to do our homework, so we could have those accountable. We can also have the right legislations comes out of this House of Representatives, and we can monitor what the government are doing. The problem is that now we are actually negotiating a deal with the IMF. And as you all know, Egypt is facing a very difficult time when it comes to economic reforms and financial. And this will actually impose a lot of measures to be taken, raising taxes, subsidy, and that might reflect in people's life, daily life. So I was personally wondering how come they will promote this at this stage where people are really frustrated and full of anger. People believe that since the revolution, they have gained nothing but troubles. They don't feel safe anymore, they don't feel secured anymore, and they feel that they are excluded. Most of those activists or politicians whom they have been partners in the early days of the revolutions, they feel that they have been excluded. They have no place, no space to be within the government or the other institutions. So I'm wondering, as an outcome of this deal with the IMF, what will happen? Because we expect that there will be, as I said, raise in taxes and also the subsidy, which is, I know it's imperative, it's important to do these steps, but how are we going to promote this to the people whom they already tired enough? They cannot bear any more burden. So I think the challenges Egypt have, the only way is to have a real national dialogue where all parties have to be part of it, and whereby we could draw a future for Egypt, a national vision whereby we all follow. It's very obvious that the Muslim Brotherhood or the Islamists alone, they cannot do it. And we have been trying and waiting to see. Actually, they make mistakes from day one. More seeking for power than having consensus. So I still believe that the chance is there, especially that most of the European and the American countries have been giving advices, have been talking to them that you should open up and include others. You cannot continue the way you are. But again, so far nothing happened. So I believe that what should be done is that all the oppositions should work hard on the coming 3-4 months where we expect election to take place. And these elections, we have been asking for guarantees to make sure that it is free and fair election, starting from the election committee, to the judiciary supervision, to the armed forces to protect all the poll stations. Many guarantees we have been asking for. But parallel to this, I think we also have to get some of those Islamist leaders, those who have influence in their supporters and followers, that we should get them exposed to the outside world. We should get them engaged. They have to know that we are not alone in this world, that Egypt have commitment. There is values and principles has to be respected for human rights, women's rights, minorities, and so on. This is a fact, because these people, they will always be there. They became a reality, part of the political arena in Egypt, you know. I mean, maybe next time, next election, they will not have that big majority, but they will be there. So we have to make them understand, because most of them, they haven't been practicing real politics. Years, either in prisons or they were completely excluded, you know. So we have to do both, actually. I still, although, I mean, it doesn't look, for many Egyptians, they are not happy, but I still believe that the chance is there. This is a situation where, as I said, it took all of us by surprise, and it's after years of suffering and years of, there was no real practice of politics. So I still believe that the chance is there. As for the Americans, I think what they should do is, they should not, this is how I see it, they should not get their fingers much when it comes to the domestic politics. They should only speak about the values, about the principles, and they should stay away, because this is a time where things are really confusing, and the Americans will always get the blame, as it is happening now. Actually, some of the liberals and some Christians believe that the Americans are the one who have brought the Muslim Brotherhood. Yes, very much. So I think they should somehow stay away, and if they have to support the Egyptian people, it has to be clear that this, whatever they do, it's for the Egyptian people. It's not for this regime or for that regime. It has to be for the Egyptian people. They have to find a way where they could really deliver to the people, whether through civil society or other ways, because this is how people believe that the Americans are behind them and they are the one who is supporting them. So this has to be clear. One other thing is the armed forces, the military. I believe that this is the only solid institution left in Egypt, and we should keep supporting them, keep helping them. They are not affiliated with any regime. Some people believe that they have make a deal. I'm saying no, this is not true. They have fulfilled what they have promised, and they hand over power, as they said, to the elected president. Apart from this, they are neutral, and they are the one who is really looking after the interest of all Egyptians. So helping them, supporting them, because they are there and they will always be there. Regimes might change, might go, but the army is popular, respected, and people are proud of. Even if it happened during the transition, the early days of the transition when they were actually handling or managing, they make mistakes. Yes, they are not politicians and they were not prepared for this. So they make mistakes, we all admit. But at least they were fair and they have kept their promises that they will hand over power. So for me, the army is an institution which we have to make sure that it is remain strong, solid, and neutral. As for the situation now, we have what we call the Shura Council, which is actually, most of Egyptians believe that it's not legitimate. 1/3 have been appointed, and the 2/3 is almost semi-appointed. So it's not a real parliament. And we have, from the days where we were drafting the new constitution, we have been saying that they should be very limited when it comes to any legislations. Today, actually, they are passing to them a lot of draft laws, like the NGO law, like the judiciary law, like many other laws, and we have been complaining and say, this was not what you promised. You have promised that they will only very, very limited, because they were not actually elected at that time based on as a legislative body, you know. So, but it is there, and it will be there until the House of Representatives is elected by maybe September, October this year. So what I want to say is, we know that the United States have been very supportive during all these years, and we know that there have been a lot of criticism about the US policies in Egypt and in other areas, but I think with our strategic relationship, I believe still the chance is there. I think we should give more attention to more education program, more culture, of course, economic support, and we should somehow wait until we have a stable parliament whereby we could really try to work out the future for Egypt. One of the main problems we have, I think, is the water, the Nile water. This is one of the issues where very, very important issue, especially the problems we have with the countries of the Nile Basin, whereby I think United States, World Bank, Europeans, they should not really support or finance any new dams unless there is consensus, there is an agreement with these countries who are sharing this. The other one is nuclear power stations for peaceful use. This is also because we do have a problem when it comes to energy. And this is something I think of great importance for us, for Egypt's future, you know. And of course we can talk more about it, but these are two main things which I personally have an interest, because I know that this is more or less representing a big challenge for Egypt on the coming years. Apart from this, I think I would be ready to discuss if we speak about foreign policy, but I think I can leave this to if you have any questions and so on. Well, I'm glad to be here. Of course, I have had hoped that my friend from the Muslim Brotherhood, Freedom and Justice Party, would be here. That would give me more chance to speak more in details, but I will respect his absence, and I will be open to questions you would like to ask. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll repeat what I said. We're actually very glad you're here as well, even more than we thought we were going to be. But I think you gave a really nice overview of what I think the situation in Egypt is, and I think it creates a pretty good basis for us to have a discussion before we turn it over to the audience. I want to pick up on a couple of things that you said. You offered an explanation that what's really needed right now is consensus. What's needed is a national dialogue. What's needed is for the present government in Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood to understand that given the circumstances, they need to be much more inclusive. And I want to start by asking you a question. Given that, the first question really is, does President Morsi and do the Muslim Brotherhood, do they understand how desperate the situation is in Egypt right now? Do they understand that, you know, all the talk about reserves, which were at $36 billion 2 years ago at the time of the revolution, and now supposedly they're at $13 billion, that even that is dramatically overstated because most of the hard currency reserves are not liquid. They may be in gold, and there's also debts. Do they understand, as they see there are blackouts nearly every night in Cairo, something that didn't used to take place? Do they get what the circumstances are, and do they worry about what the implications for them could be?
Well, to be honest, talking to them, they are very cool. Yes, they are very cool. They say, well, this is normal. Post-revolutions, usually these things happen. We are changing the country. So, no, they are not really worried, and they are relaxed. And this is what I'm saying is because I talk to them, and I'm saying, well, look, we have problems everywhere. How are you going to deal with this if you don't have sort of national consensus or support or reconciliation? How are you going to deal with this? So, no, actually, they are not worried. I don't know how or why, but they feel relaxed, and, you know, they believe that they are doing their best, but they believe that there is always counter-revolution, third party. They always believe that the deep state is the one who is trying to make them fail. So, but they are doing fine, and they have no problem. This is what they believe. But you have to know that the president, actually, he is not running the country alone. No. The president, of course, he listens very much to the guidance office of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are very influential, and they have a big say on what he do and what he does not do.
All right, so let me ask you a question. What would make them worry? It's a serious question. I mean, if right now they have this kind of narrative that they've developed that A, it's normal, B, there's this kind of counter-revolution that the Mubarak system is still in place, and it's what's frustrating them. If that wasn't the case, things would be okay, and somehow they'll weather this. What would make them worry? What would get their attention? What would get them to begin to recognize what you're trying to convince them of right now?
I think a united opposition, strong opposition. Egyptians to stand and say no. This is what will make them worried. As long as, you know, having an international pressure, whether European or American, you know, they know how to deal with this. But if the Egyptians, as they stand against Mubarak, if they feel that the opposition could be united and could be a real threat, I'm sure they will think twice. This is how I see it. This is the only way which you could make if, and this is one thing where the military is respecting the legitimacy of the president as long as he is popular and somehow supported by the people. So I think the whole thing is the opposition, the people. This is where the strength is. Otherwise, anything else, they don't care. If they are, as you said, the reserves have been down, they shop around to Qatar, to Turkey, to wherever, and they manage. Even for a month or 2 or 3, it's just an aspirin. That will not last for long. But still, they manage, and they can survive. But the only thing which will make them really worried would be the people, the opposition. If they could stand together, strong, and having a case against them.
And what makes it so difficult for the opposition? I mean, let's flip this now. If we're saying that the Brotherhood doesn't really recognize the situation, they feel that they have this attitude, what me worry, we can manage, and they're not facing this united opposition, there's a kind of mirror image here that the opposition itself is not organizing itself in a united fashion. What is the reason that there's such a reluctance on the opposition, or an inability on the part of the opposition, to come together to present this kind of united front for the sake of Egypt?
Well, I mean, historically, the opposition, even through Mubarak time, they were scattered. They are not united, weak. We need time, of course, to build our, let's say, political parties and so on. But the problem is that those who are leading today, they are from different schools, and different interests. And I will give you an example. When Secretary Kerry was recently in Cairo a couple of months ago, same as Lady Ashton, they always would like to meet with what they call the National Salvation Front. Right. This is more or less united opposition here. They are not representing all opposition, but these are the, let's say, the stars, ex-presidential candidates. And surprisingly, every one of them, and that's what makes Secretary Kerry and Ashton saying, why every one of them would like to meet us alone, not together. That proves that everyone have his own way of. So I think we need time. We need time. And even up till today, you can see some of them still talking about boycotting election, which is nonsense, in my opinion. I mean, who cares? If you will boycott, they will be very happy. Thank you. Who cares? So that's why I'm saying it's different schools, different way of thinking, and some of them have been counting. The more they create violence, that might make the military step in, which is never happened. And I don't see it will happen in the near future, So unless we do our homework, getting engaged with the people, campaigning on the ground, there is no chance.
So let me ask the question I asked you about the Muslim Brotherhood, what would make them worry? What could catalyze greater unity among the opposition? You're suggesting you need time, but are there further developments, further efforts by the Muslim Brotherhood to seize control of all institutions that would constitute more of a wake-up call to the opposition, so that all these different elements of the opposition, instead of thinking only of their own immediate concerns, would realize that the broader future of Egypt is at stake? Or is that something that just is not in the cards at this point?
Well, I think that the Muslim Brotherhood, they are proceeding with, let's say, filling and occupying most of the posts in, in most of the state institutions. They are doing this. They are not wasting any time because they believe this is the only way they could really control the whole thing, while the opposition, as I said, only giving statements, sitting in talk show programs, TV, or workshop in some of 5-star hotels, or maybe going to the AUC, or having a lecture there, or JUC, and sometimes WC, anything, nothing. So, well, I mean, it needs a hell of a lot of work,
Well, look, I accept that it needs a hell of a lot of work, and I also accept that there's a legacy here. There was a legacy, largely from the Mubarak period, to ensure that what might be described as a secular opposition, a moderate secular opposition, really didn't emerge. So that legacy has obviously made it more difficult, but the picture you're painting is basically one of a polarization, which is, on the one hand, the Muslim Brotherhood cares more about control than governance and figures it can manage. Maybe it'll continue to get a month here, a month there. Qatar will help out, Turkey will help out. The truth is, both Qatar and Turkey aren't going to help out much longer.
Correct.
And the bitter reality of what's going to be faced is not going to be something that can be easily escaped. The opposition is, at this point, not focused on doing what opposition should do, which is building an identity, creating a platform, finding a way to create connections with the part of the Egyptian public that they've never had connections with. So we have this kind of duality at this point. And the military, as you describe, is not about to come in and rescue the situation, at least not at this point, even if there are some in the opposition who may hope for it. Now, you have put your finger on the parliament and elections as being one possible way out. And yet you also said that the National Salvation Front is talking about boycotting the election. What do you think is likely to emerge in terms of participation in the election? Do you think there's any prospect that the National Salvation Front will give up this idea of boycott? Because in the end, it's more than self-defeating. I mean, they don't learn the techniques of building yourself. I mean, one of the virtues of having to run in elections, it actually requires a certain kind of discipline, a certain kind of organization. It requires building the kind of capabilities that can help you for the future. So if they choose to boycott, they also don't develop any of those capabilities. So do you think there's much prospect for change there? And of those in the opposition now, what percentage do you think actually will participate in the elections and what percentage will boycott?
Well, I believe that the National Salvation Front, together with other oppositions, I think they are considering seriously to be part of the coming elections. Although there have been some voices saying we have to boycott the election, but I think at the end, I think they will all run. But the thing is, are we all going to all run with one list whereby we could really compete, or with different lists where that is, of course, to the benefit of the Islamists, So this is still going on. There is consultation, discussions between those secular liberal parties to try to work out one list whereby we can compete. So hopefully this will be clear within this month. So I believe most probably, that they will all run. They have notes that people were not happy and they have lost some popularity, when they have been saying that we will not run and so on. People were not happy with this. So I think most probably this will not happen. but again, it's not only a matter of running. We have been asking for guarantees to make sure that we have free and fair elections. And this is, it goes with the election committee, with the judiciary supervision. It goes also with the armed forces, that they should protect all the polling stations together with the police. So we have been requesting a few points where it has to be considered, so we could feel relaxed when we are to the election. And the electoral law, which is still has to come out from the Constitutional Court by the end of this month. Final version approved, so exactly, we know exactly what is it, you know. So, you know, I mean, I believe that the chances is that we could easily, all those who believe in civil state, I think they can easily get 50%. And the Islamists as a whole, means Salafi, Muslim Brotherhood, I think they would get 50%. They will not go lower than this. You see, the thing is, yes, they have lost a lot of supports, sympathy, but they have this election machine. They have the capabilities of mobilizing people, organizing people. They are very loyal to their ideology, to their beliefs. So I believe that they will easily, all of the Islamists, Salafi, Muslim Brotherhood, I think they would manage with 50%. If we can get 50%, this is a big success.
So I want to shift it partly, but before I get into some of the foreign policy issues that you kind of raised at the end, I want to talk again about the role of the outside world, the United States and the outside world. You said don't get your fingers in the middle of domestic politics. You said stick to broad principles. Now, is this one area, as it relates to the election law, as it relates to the conduct of elections, that is a productive area for the United States to focus on? Should the United States and others emphasize certain principles about free and fair elections and what constitutes free and fair elections?
Correct. This is what I mean, that you can speak about the fundamental rights, Copts, Christian rights, minorities, women rights. Yes, this is all principles and values, and Egypt is supposed to be committed because of international agreement, international convention. So this is okay. But speaking about, or let's say mediating between political parties, or I would say at this time, you better somehow stay out, because it's cloudy, and you will get the blame at the end. You know, this is what I'm saying, you know. People very much in Egypt believe in this special agenda, and you have seen what happened to NDI and IRI and Freedom House. And actually they were there years helping all political parties use to raise awareness, to building capacity building for all parties, and after all, they accuse them and they go after them, you know. So what I'm saying is, in the time where there is no rules, it's all, there is no standard, you better, don't get involved. Your ambassador, actually, Ambassador Patterson, she's doing a very good job. She is trying to socialize with all political parties, giving advices. And not only that, even you find her in some of these, culture events, arts, economic events. I mean, she's trying to be in different areas, not politically, But still, even she's also blamed and attacked from time to time. Although she's, as I said, she's doing a great job. But this is how it is. It's the Cairo nowadays full of gossips, full of rumors, people are suspicious. So that's why I'm saying you better save, your energy by, not getting too much involved. This is how I see it.
So at one level, reinforce this point that you're emphasizing right now about pressing for election laws, pressing for the certainty to be able to conduct the election in a safe, secure environment for candidates to be able to operate so that there is a level playing field for the election. Focus more on these kinds of principles as it relates to elections, and focus on broad principles of respect for minority rights, respect for women's rights.
Yeah.
These are the keys to be focused on. All right, so what about this one other area? This will be a kind of segue into what you were beginning to suggest at the end of your talk. One principle clearly that we and others have emphasized is that Egypt has to fulfill its international obligations. One such international obligation is its peace treaty with Israel. Nobody is more committed to that than you personally. There's no doubt that your uncle was a historic and in many ways a revolutionary figure because of what he did. Is there a way, do you think, for this government, which on the one hand you want to compete with, is there a way for this government to make the peace treaty the treaty of the whole Egyptian public by what it does? And is that possible?
Well, I don't see this happening now at all. They cannot open too many fronts. They have already enough problems inside. And they don't want to go in confrontations with the outside world, I don't think that they will ever do anything like this, at least at this stage. They have confirmed that they respect all agreements and treaty and so on, But if anything like this will happen, it will not be at this stage at all. They need the support of the Americans, the Europeans. So I don't think they will.
So let me ask the question differently. In a sense, what you're saying is they're not going to break the peace treaty because they can't afford to be cut off from the possibility of international assistance. By the way, when Anwar was talking about the IMF agreement, the standby agreement, and the fact that the reason there needs to be a consensus is because while this will provide $4.8 billion, it'll be based upon cutting subsidies for food and fuel, which will add to what is already a painful situation for most Egyptians. So that's why you're suggesting that there needs to be a kind of consensus on the inside to do this. You should understand that if there is an IMF agreement, it won't just be $4.8 billion. The minute there is an IMF standby agreement, it means that there'll be $2 billion additional dollars from the World Bank. It means there'll be an additional loan from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. The total amount, and there'll be another $1 billion from the EU itself, it means it's close to $8 billion. Now, again, given what Egypt's real situation is, that's not going to solve Egypt's problem, but it will certainly put them in a different place. And it also creates a climate where those who will be very reluctant in the private sector to invest in Egypt will begin to look at it more favorably. So it really does unlock a certain door. So on the one hand, there isn't going to be, they have very strong reasons not to break the peace treaty with Israel because it closes the possibility of getting this kind of outside assistance. I guess the question that I would like to get at is maybe twofold. One, should we collectively insist that we need to see a consensus within Egypt before that loan can be concluded? And I'll ask the second question after you answer that.
Well, yes, I think the IMF actually have been touring around, meeting with most of the political parties, explaining to them these details of this IMF deal, Actually, the government did it. The government was supposed to be the one who do this, that they should have come with a clear plan, these economic reforms, and that what does that mean, to the people, when it comes to raising taxes, subsidy, and all this. But the IMF, actually, representative, they have been touring around explaining, and they were trying to get sort of consensus from the political parties, you know. So I think we need to have this IMF deal, definitely. Yani. It will open up a lot of opportunities, as Mr. Dennis was saying now. So, but although it's painful when it comes to the consequences of this deal, but we have to. This is supposed to be done years back, but it have been always postponing, you know, because of the fear of the reaction of the people. So it happened that we have to do it now, either now or never, as they say. So yes, it is difficult, but I think we have to go through. I think most of the political parties, leaders, they have consensus, maybe except very few of them. But it's a must. This will be the only way which will open new opportunities for us.
Will this happen before the parliamentary election?
Here is the point. Well, I mean, as the IMF have announced that it's supposed to happen within a month or two. But even if they will sign, would they impose all this, let's say, measures at that time, or they might delay it a little bit and take place? This is not clear, but I think they have to sign this agreement maybe in maximum 2 months. We cannot afford any delay. But when they will impose this sort of measures, maybe if they can survive to make it later, after I'm sure they will, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Given the kind of internal preoccupation, I can understand why this government and the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't want things to heat up in Gaza. I can understand why the government helped to broker the deal with Israel over Gaza. The last thing they need is an escalation there. Is their interest in keeping things calm, is that the extent of their interest, or could it extend beyond that? Do they have any interest in seeing a broader peace concluded between the Israelis and the Palestinians, or not?
I would even say more than this, and you are specialist in this. I think having them in power now, I believe this is a great opportunity that a comprehensive peace can be done. This is how I see it, you know.
Well, I hope you're right. Look, I've spent a lot of my life trying to work on this.
Well, I think having a strong, I would say, Islamist party in power, and a party whom we know how influential they are to Hamas, they are almost affiliated from them. And we have seen what happened with this ceasefire. I think they can play a role, and there is a chance, but they wouldn't even open this at this stage now. I think they need first to have things settled inside. And speaking about, again, the peace treaty with Israel, I don't think we have a problem with the peace treaty with Israel as terms. It's the only thing which have been always a complaint was this, let's say, security, numbers of security forces within the Zone C in Sinai. Many Egyptians and some of military analysts, they believe that we should increase the numbers to make sure that the borders are very well taken care of. I believe that the Israelis have said fine, you know, and they did this to avoid any kind of terrorist attack but I think this is the only demand, as I know, that they would like to see more troops within the Zone C to make sure that the area is somehow under control in Sinai. But the army, as you know, they have been very strict when it comes to tunnels. They have been dealing with this very, very strongly. But to be honest, we have also to think of a way where those people in Gaza, they need, or we have to supply them, not only Egypt, but the international community. We have to secure for them a fair and safe passage for food, humanitarian service. There has to be these passages where the European was monitoring, you know. These people, they have needs and they have demands, and it has to be somehow secured. You cannot blockade the whole thing from all sides. What do you expect these people will do? So, but as for the tunnels, I know that our armed forces have been seriously dealing with this, and they have been doing a great job on this. I know that there is more to be done in Sinai, definitely, Yani. But the army is keeping an eye. Maybe they are trying to give a chance for some, let's say, mediation, negotiations with some of those radicals. You have to know that we have also the Salafis now are all around the country, and they have been asking that give us a chance to talk to those jihadi. Maybe we can convince them to I mean, how do you call it? Not use, I mean, arms or weapons and so on. So there have been a very serious effort, but the army is keeping an eye, and there have been a lot of, I would say, communications with European, with American about Sinai, and that it's of great importance that Sinai has to be safe, secured, to avoid any kind of problems here or there, especially with our neighbors, those whom we have peace with, and we have to respect this. And, you know, it's their right, as we say, you know. So
I think there's no doubt that a jihadi presence in Sinai is not just a threat to Israel, it's a threat to Egypt.
of course,
And you lost 18 soldiers.
that's right.
So it's pretty clear that that would also not exactly add to the credibility of the government if they didn't do more on that. Let me ask one last question, then I'll turn it over to the audience. I understand that the preoccupation is internal right now. Can you envision, though, that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt would accept an end of conflict deal between the Israelis and Palestinians?
Yes, I believe I could imagine this. Yes.
Well, I know you have a rich imagination,
Well,
but I also know that...
I mean, it's you know, if they are truly and believe in Islam, our religion is for peace and tolerance and, you know, love. So, I mean, why not? But maybe, you know, when time comes, maybe not at this challenging time whereby they felt that, you know, people after them, inside, outside. So maybe when things is somehow settled, I believe that the chance is there. No one have ever thought that Egypt, you know, the time of President Sadat would have taken this initiative for peace, you know. It was shocking for everyone. But it happened. So I'm not surprised. We can see this happening again. Why not? Especially if they are true believers of Islam. And you know, speaking about this, again, Islam or Christianity or Jew, I mean, this is all religions which promote friendship and peace and so after all, and it's one God for all of us. It happened that there is some extremists or some you know, fanatics here and there, but that doesn't mean that the religion itself is bad, you know. Or
Okay, well, look, I very much appreciate the scope of your comments and also the candor of your comments. So why don't we now turn it over to the audience so they can also ask you questions? Yes. All right. There are a lot of people who I may not recognize, by name, just because I don't know their name, but there are people whose names I do know, and the people I will call on everybody. And I'm not gonna, I won't look in just one direction. I'll try to be all over the place. All right, so, Moise.
Mr. Sadat, I want to thank you very much for your comments. And I do have a question. I would actually, it's a question I would actually like to ask your empty chair next to you, but I'm going to ask you instead. We were in Israel last November, and Shimon Peres said, you know, we could solve a lot of the Egyptians' water problems if they would just simply let us. He said, after all, we are the world experts. We make 3 drops of water out of 1. We know not only how to use water very efficiently, we know how to recycle water very efficiently. We know how to make obtain water from unconventional sources. So, do you think this is a possibility? Would the Egyptians actually allow the Israelis to solve this very serious water problem?
Well, at this stage, I don't think so. No. To be honest, no, I don't think so. No. You see, I mean, the situation in Egypt now, and that's why I always say as a piece of advice, you know, following what have been happening, striking in Syria, I would say that the Israelis have to somehow stay. Don't create frustrations. In a time where most of these Arab countries now, with this uprising and all this, we want just the Israelis to, you know, don't get involved, because this is a time where, you know, we don't want to create more enemies. We are trying to create a good environment for chances to try to work out a peace in the whole area, you know. This is how I see it. But of course, you know, they have their points. I understand what security means and what Hezbollah means and all this. But I think the more they are somehow being quite not involved in these, let's say, internal matters, the better for everyone. At least at this stage where you have youth, youngsters, full of anger, and we don't want to open opportunities for any kind of reactions here or there. This is what I would recommend, you know.
Can I just, I'm going to recognize another question, but let me just ask one follow-up question. Does the Turkish-Israeli reconciliation create a better climate from your standpoint in terms of making it easier for particularly the Islamists who are emerging to focus only on internal problems and decide, all right, they don't need to deal with Israel, and they could rationalize later on a relationship with Israel?
You know, as you know, the Turks are actually opening up. They are opening up everywhere with regional countries, you know. They are in Iraq, they are in Syria, they are, of course, very much with Egypt nowadays, because they look at them as a model, actually, you know. So, no, I don't think this harm or this reflect on anything. We know that the Turkish-Israeli relationship have been for years, and this really doesn't, no.
Okay.
Maybe if there is an Iranian-Israeli relationship, maybe we will start to think, start to get worried, you know.
You really are a visionary. Second table back here.
Hello, my name is Ifar. I'm a freelance journalist from Egypt. I wanted to thank you for your very comprehensive talk. You mentioned that the way that the Muslim Brotherhood would stand and take perhaps attention of people's dissatisfaction is if there was a united opposition. But with all the things you mentioned, the sectarian tensions, the collapsing economy, the crackdown on law and order, on free expression, and an opposition where their only unifying kind of characteristic is that they're anti-Muslim Brotherhood, how likely do you think is that to happen? And we've talked a lot about the IMF and how likely the loan is, but the last time we had a president try to enforce the fiscal reforms, the very stringent fiscal reforms that they're demanding, which are the subsidies, Anwar Sadat, you had riots in the streets, which actually in the end we had to go back from that. So how likely is that to also happen? We're thinking of the best case scenario, but what if the worst case scenario happens and that actually incites people who are, as you say, very bitter and angry now? I was reading this article by a Jewish professor, and he talked about how Egyptians are suffering from 6 Ds: despair, disillusionment, disappointment, distress, despair, distrust. What if that all boils together, and then with the fiscal reforms actually causes people to go into the streets? Would that create the unity that we needed? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, speaking about opposition, I think it just requires that there has to be sincere efforts. There has to be a real political will that we all now understand that the only way is if we are not happy, if we are not satisfied with those who are in power, then they have to go the same way we have brought them, which is the democratic process, which is the ballot box. And speaking about ballot box, because always the Muslim Brothers, Islamists, always refer to the ballot box. Okay, the ballot box, of course, give legitimacy to the president or whoever elected. But, of course, there is also a responsibility, and that he should respect the rule of law, constitution, and right of opposition or minorities. And actually, this is not happening now. So what I'm saying is the opposition, if they are really sincere, if they are really having a goodwill, I'm sure they can. No one have ever imagined that a regime of Mubarak after 30 years, that would happen, No one have ever thought that this would happen. Even the early days of the revolution, while people were in Tahrir Square, they were not actually asking him to go. They were just asking for reforms and social justice. And no one asked him to step down. So what I'm saying is we have to exert a serious, sincere efforts. I'm sure we can make the change, and we can make them listen. The other thing is speaking about the fiscal year and this budget deficit we have, which is close to 200, maybe 30 billion Egyptian pounds. I think they are very careful because they know what happened in 1977. They know very well. So I think they will not let this happen, and this is why they are trying to shop around by having this, let's say, aspirin for the coming months until nothing to touch or to reflect on those medium or those with low income and so on. I think they are very careful about this. They know that this is very sensitive and that could be the end. Not only for them, for the whole country. It could be chaos everywhere. So they are very careful and they are trying to hold it and to have alternatives to avoid any sort of hunger revolution.
There?
My name is Behel Tawil. I'm an Egyptian TV reporter working on TV channel. Mr. Sadat, you mentioned the Egyptian army too much tonight, actually. And my understanding, you see the army like it's kind of the Salvation Army. The country, Egypt, was under the control of the army since 1952 till, we can say, till President Morsi was elected and it wasn't a good time for Egypt, especially when the army was really involved in the politics since the revolution till Morsi was elected, and I can tell you more, a lot of stories about torture, about censorship, and especially during my work as a journalist, I wasn't able to say a word or write a word about the army without a lot of, I have permissions, and usually I will not obtain those permissions. And one of the problems we criticize, and the opposition criticize, the Muslim Brotherhood because they are involved, we can say that they are Islamists and they are working for the sake of the Islamists, not the whole of the country. But even the army made the same mistake. They were depending on, I want to be polite and say conservative Islamist leaders like Mohammed Hassan, Menam Shahat, and the others solve a lot of problems. So I need to know, I need you to make it more clear how you see the army can help the country with all of this bad heritage. Thank you.
No, if you remember what I was saying is, I'm not saying that they are angels, or they don't make mistakes. They made mistakes, of course, vital mistakes during the transition, yes. But again, what they promised, they did, they kept, and they have handed over the power to the elected president. This is something very important. And they are now, they are completely back. They are not anymore in politics. They are now concerned with what they are doing. And there have been a lot of talks about the army economic empowerment or empire and so on, They have already allowed now the Central Auditing Office to all their civilian projects to come and check. They say we have no problem. So, I mean, I cannot blame the army at that time. Actually, what they have seen was only the Islamists, whom they were strongly, solid, united. There was no alternatives to the army whereby they could, it was only the Islamists who were ready and mobilizing their people. So they have to sit and talk to them as they did sit and talk to us. But the others were ready. So it's not that I'm trying to say, no, what I'm saying is that this is the only institution left solid, strong. It's a fact. You have no other institution. The judiciary system are today split. Even Al-Azhar, who is known to promote the moderate Islam, is attacked from time to time. The church, the media, and the police does not exist anymore. This is a fact. And you hear rumors about that there is ideas of having special police, something which might be copied or imitated from Iran or from. So you hear a lot of rumors. I cannot say that it's true, but so we have to keep the army somehow away from all this, because this is the only thing left, I mean, for Egyptians and for our, I would say, safety, security. So that's it. But I'm not saying that they made mistakes. It was for them, as for all of us, a big responsibility, and they are not politicians. They don't know what to do about it. And they make mistakes, and they admit this, and there is now people who are in trials from the army, officers and army. They are making them accountable for this. But they didn't talk much about it because of the army image, But there is people who are now charged. So, I mean, this is how I see it,
We've got time for 2 more questions. Why don't I take both of them at the same time? Stanley?
My question is one of the difficulties in Egypt at the present time in regard to Christianity. There is a major confrontations in sections of Egypt today. Major confrontations in sections of Egypt today with Christianity. There's approximately 15 million Christians living in Egypt, and churches have been raided and burned. Christianity has taken a terrible toll. The Brotherhood has not taken any active movement to prevent this from happening, and it's being promulgated primarily through the Islam movement in sections of Egypt. That's the first question. There's nothing been done about it, and it's gotten very serious. The second question is, isn't it true that the majority of the leaders under Mubarak, when the army was a powerful force, are no longer in power? They've all resigned or are in jail. No one ever hears of them. When I was in Egypt years ago, the army was well known. Every leader was there. They're no longer known. None of them are there. The generals are all gone. So what is really happening with the army? They have been really reduced to a force without leadership. And is there any comment you would like to make on that? Thank you.
Let's take the second question as well.
It was the same question. If it was the same question, who owns the army now?
Okay.
Okay. Well, first speaking about Christians and this sectarian violence and so on, I think the problem we have in Egypt is that unless we apply rule of law, and whoever, no matter who he is, make any kind of aggression or any kind of, he has to be accountable and he have to go to court. But this sort of friendly settlement or accustomed, is no more valid. We have to apply rule of law. People have to feel that there is equal rights, no discrimination. And that would require some legislations to take place for equal rights, non-discriminations, and also the how do you call it, the worship places, I mean, building more churches and so on. This has to be easy to get permissions to. So I think we have to do a lot of things to give confidence to all Egyptians. But I can tell you that today it's not only Christians who are worried. Muslims are worried too, They don't feel happy or relaxed with what's going on. But of course with Christians, because, it's their country as it's ours, I think we have to apply rule of law. And we have to make sure that there is some legislations has to take place to make free and equal rights for everyone. As to the army, no, it's the army is an institution where those generals who have been in power, they are retired, and there is always a new generals, And as I said, the army is there, the army belonged to Egypt, not to a specific regime or affiliated with, no, the army is for all Egyptians. This is something, again, I'm saying the army is for all Egyptians. They are not, and they have not made any deal with anyone. And days will prove this. Maybe today there is somehow a bit of, but days will prove that they were not, they didn't make any deal, So I think we are a little bit exaggerating with what have happened during the transition. And that's why we think that there have been side deals, or I doubt. I believe that there was no deals. This is what happened. And their time is finished. They are not anymore in politics, and now they are more concerned with their barracks and their training and so on. And we better keep them that way, and that's it.
You know, I would just add, Stanley, it's true that people like Tantawi are gone, but I wouldn't assume, you shouldn't assume that the current leaders of the military don't matter. When there was a rumor that General Assisi was unhappy with President Morsi immediately arranged a photo op because he wanted to send a signal that that was not the case. So don't leap to the conclusion that the military doesn't matter. They want to be out of politics right now. That's clear. But they are an institution, and they haven't gone away. And I think your point, Anwar, is that they represent the one institution today that still is intact. Look, I want to thank you very much for coming. I want you to also understand that nobody wants to see Egypt become a failed state. Yeah. That's the last thing we want to see. And I would say that when we hear you speak, it gives us hope, and I would say that your hopes are also our hopes. So thank you very much for coming.
Let me, if I can, let me echo what Dennis had to say. If you were like I was a little surreptitiously in the last hour following this event on Twitter, you will find out that we have just seen the most famous empty chair since Clint Eastwood in the Republican National Convention. But you will also see that, that we've, at least one Twitterati said, there should be the next president of the Arab Republic of Egypt.